everyone, welcome to another episode of Thriving Talk. Hope everyone has enjoyed the last episode. This is another Dadson edition in which me, Tim, gets the chance to ask my dad, Tinku Thompson, questions. Dad, I hope you're doing well today.
I'm doing good, and looking forward to this episode, which is a very important one, I guess.
Yeah, you could say that. A reminder to all our listeners, Thriving Talk is available on many different major platforms like iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and many other platforms. So make sure to go subscribe to the Thriving Talk on your favorite platform. So we're gonna get right into today's episode. Today we're gonna talk about this topic called conflict resolution. So disagreements can often happen as we go through life, and we are all different in personality and how we are, and we all see the world in a different ways. Our past experiences can also shape how we view the world and how we act towards certain situations and people. Personalities clash and struggles take place. We all know these things. So I'm going to start off with my first question. I'm going to ask you, what is conflict management?
Yeah, it's good that you started with that question of conflict management. I think we are using three words here. Let me get that and clarify that before I get into the conflict management. Number one is a conflict. Number two, conflict resolution. And number three is a conflict management. So conflict is definitely a clash, a problem which is happening between two. It's a conflict, basically. So when we talk about conflict resolution, it is about solving that problem. And the conflict management refers to how you handle those conflicts or disagreements, right? On any given day, you may have to deal with dispute between you and another individual, your family members, or even your co-workers, different people. So conflict management has to do with how you manage and how you handle those things. Resolution is how you resolve these things, and conflict, of course, is there. So these are, if you go into the details, there are a lot of things we can talk about those things. But, in general, there are many reasons why people disagree. And many conflicts revolve around things like, people have their own values, real or perceived values. And when there's a difference in that, there could be conflicts. Perceptions can generate conflicts. Then if two people are having conflicting goals in life, then that can give rise to conflicts. Sometimes power dynamics plays a big role. And of course, communication style can also create problems and conflicts. If you're not able to understand the communication style of people, sometimes some people have some I would say natural way which can trigger conflicts. So conflict management refers to how you actually manage those conflicts.
So are there styles of conflict management?
Yeah, there are styles, there are ways of conflict management. As I said, there are different personalities, and conflicts can come up because of different reasons, right? Now, the problem is different people may deal with conflicts in different ways, and they have different approaches, and sometimes it is also called as different styles. Then there are different models. So let me just bring to your attention 5 models which are used in conflict management. It's called as 5 styles, basically. One is accommodating. So when a conflict is managed in an accommodating mode, the conflict management tends to be in the high in cooperation, but low in assertiveness, right? So what happens is you resolve the disagreement by sacrificing your own needs and desires for the other party. Okay? So this style may benefit at times, and you can move quickly if it is not important, but at home, if you are having a conflict with someone, and if your relationship is more important, you can basically move forward accommodating, ignoring it. Not basically ignoring, but you just make a compromise there. So for some scenarios, some cases, this may be very good, but then there are other scenarios where you may need assertive, more assertive style, and you cannot be accommodating. The second style is called as avoiding. So when you're avoiding, you try to dodge or bypass a conflict, right? This is low in assertiveness and cooperativeness. Avoidance is unproductive because it cannot handle disputes, because sometimes it can make the other people feel that you don't care. I also, if it is left unresolved, some conflicts can become more troublesome when you're avoiding. But there are times where avoiding conflict management style also works, especially if you need time to think through a disagreement, or you have more pressing problems to deal with. The risk of dealing with that problem maybe more than the benefits you are going to achieve out of resolving that. I will give you one example. Let's say you are dealing with a medical issue, or you are dealing with some problems where you need to have less anxiety, you need to have good mental health for your recovery. That may not be a good time to start getting into conflict resolution, because in some cases like that, avoiding may be better, because who knows, when you get into that, it can get more ugly, and that can create stress and problem for you. In those scenarios, sometimes avoiding, because that gives you some time. So the third style is called as collaborating. This demands high level of cooperation from everyone involved, right? So when individuals are in a conflict, they come together and find a resolution, or a respectful resolution rather, which benefits everyone. So collaborating works best if there is time and the same power level. The parties involved are at the same power level. So if it is not in those category, same power level, and then there is respect, and you have time, it may not be a good style to choose. The fourth one is the competing style. That is sometimes called as forcing. In that scenario, you put your own needs and desires over others, right? This is very high in assertiveness and low in cooperation. It's very much opposite to the first style I said about accommodating, because this is basically saying this is what my way or highway, type of a thing. Sometimes we may feel, oh, that's bad, but there are times where that may be needed, because especially if you are in a higher position and you need to resolve some issue between parties or something like that, at that time you may have to use this style to to solve problem. For example, if you and your sister is having a conflict, I may come and just use my authority, forcefully say go, and so sometimes that solves the problem, because that's a silly example, but there are times where that. The fifth style is the compromising style. Compromising style demands moderate assertiveness and cooperation from all parties involved. So in this type of a resolution, everyone gets something they want or need. This style of management of conflict is very good when the time is limited, and but the other side of the story is, when time is limited and you're going with a compromising, it is not always creative, and then some people may be less satisfied with the resolution. So just to summarize, the 5 styles I said is accommodating, avoiding, collaborating, competing, and compromising. And these are the different styles which are used in conflict management.
So we know that conflicts are like hard, difficult, and like they're hard to work through. So how can we navigate conflicts?
Yeah, you're right. It's very difficult to, because sometimes in conflict resolution, you will also have to do what is called as confrontation.
Right.
And for some people, confrontation may be very hard, right? I think it's very difficult because sometimes it's very difficult and hard to talk, people.
It is.
And I remember one day I had to confront somebody, and I read actually there is a book on confrontation, and I had to really read it to give me that strength to go and confront something, right? So it's difficult, absolutely, and you may have to work very hard. But so I want to give you some steps in navigating it. First is recognize where you are at, right? In order to look at resolving the conflict with others, you will have to recognize where you are. Sometimes you can be a peacemaker, right? If you go to a situation with a peacemaker mindset, you may have sometimes make the situation worse. So sometimes you just have to have the dialogue, and sometimes you have to say tough things with firmness, but gentleness and grace is very much needed. You may have to be willing to, hear what other party have to say, slow to speak. Sometimes we have to avoid having conflict with someone, so that if it is a long-term conflict or something, that we will have to avoid. So first of all, you need to know where you are, right? So in the conflict. And number two, I would say you will have to talk to the person about the conflict. It's important that when you have a disagreement or a conflict with someone, you talk to that person about it. Actually, the Bible actually says that if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault, and it can be between you and him alone. And if he listens, you have gained the brother. It is important that you talk to each other about what the problem is, and sooner it is the better. It may be a situation where the person you are having conflict with did not even know that they were upsetting you, and they will be able to make you change. So instead of letting it bother you and assuming with a lot of assumptions, talk to that person. Maybe what you are thinking is just your perception, and that may not be the reality. Okay? But if the person is not willing to change, accept the responsibility in those situations, the third thing you can do is you can take others along with you. Actually, I'm talking this principle from the Bible. So if you try to solve it and they are not understanding it, they are not agreeing to it, maybe they are not. So you can take one or two people along with you to talk to that person. This can be helpful as it allows people who are outside of the situation to hear both sides of the story and be able to provide wisdom, right? It is also, very helpful at times, but sometimes that may also not work, right? The fourth thing is you have to forgive the other person. It is important that we will be able to forgive because, Bible teaches Jesus has forgiven. God has forgiven us, so we need to forgive. And that is very important. And in the Lord's Prayer also, Jesus taught us to pray, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. So we need to have, and we need to bear with one another because, no one is perfect. So if something is not going right, you can forgive them at least. Even they may not forgive you or may not give you an audience to talk or whatever, but you can do that. And finally, sometimes you may have to give time. There may be situations where both parties cannot see eye to eye. In those cases, it is necessary to separate for a time, and may the Lord work in our hearts. Sometimes the situation may be so volatile that the best thing to do is to, give it time and let time also heal. But that's not the only way. So as I said, first thing is you need to know where are you in this conflict. If somebody is having something with you and you are not aware, you can't do much about it. But, it's always good as people we need to talk. So second thing is, as I said, talk to the person. If they don't understand or agree, take others along with you, but also make sure you are forgiving whatever may be the things they have done, and then you may have to give time in some cases.
So, what do you say about conflicts in like churches and organizations? Like, what's your say on that? Why do you think that happens? Or
Yeah, of course, the churches have conflicts, no doubt about it. When I say churches have conflict, what I mean by that is, there are churches where there will be conflict, and there are organizations where there will be conflict. It goes back. So sometimes when we say there will be conflict in the church, we think it's the church which is the conflict. No, it's the people in the church, right? You have to always remember, it's the people. It's not the church which is a conflict, which is in conflict. Church is built up of people. So the problem is primarily, I think, it's a sinfulness of human nature, humans, that we are fallen, but saved by the grace of God, and that's why it is very important that we recognize our fallen state, because when we are passing judgment on others, it may be that we ourselves are failing in that area. Now, when you talk about church also, it's the same thing. There are church conflicts where people in the church, and there is a biblical view, and but sometimes people are passive responders. I think I said about the styles, but in another way we can look at passive responders. There are evasive responders, defensive responders, then aggressive responders, right? People can respond in different ways. But I think in a church or any conflict situation where organizations are involved or anything like that, I would say we have to live under the lordship. It has to be a lordship experience. Then when we are following Christ, we will be able to, come at peace with many things, and living in the light. We'll have to, and we'll have to forgive others. So, as you said, there are conflicts in organizations, any religious institutions for that matter. Wherever people gather, there will be conflict. Right? You remember Adam and Eve, they had two sons, Cain and Abel. And Abel did not do anything wrong against his elder brother Cain, but you see that Cain ended up killing his brother because of jealousy and the fact that God accepted his offering. So sometimes it could stem from jealousy. Conflicts can come from people not able to enjoy the success of other people. So there are many reasons, many things which can trigger conflict. Sometimes it could be somebody unintentionally saying something, but then somebody did not like it. That can lead to some conflict. So yes, it's real. It's hard. Conflict resolution is not easy.
So do you have any final thoughts to round it off? Or
yeah, it's a long topic. I would just say what we have done is we just scratched the surface of this topic, but we have to remember that we all are part of different systems, right? I'm part of an organization I work with. I'm part of the church. I'm part of my family. I'm part of my workplace. There are different systems which a person is part of. Like you are part of your school,
right,
your classroom, and you are part of the family. So something which can happen in school can sometimes spill over to your family, right? So it's very important that we make sure that problem in one place is not carried over to the other place.
Because that makes a problem in another.
Yeah, so it just spreads the problem. And then you are the problem creator everywhere, right? So that's there. So what I'm trying to say is we have to be very careful. And then I want to read few verses from the Bible. So Matthew 7:5 says, "Hypocrite, first get rid of the log in your own eyes, then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eyes." So we cannot always be looking for others' problems. We need to first look at our problems too. Sometimes people have this attitude of I am perfect, everyone else is bad. We cannot have that. Number two, the second verse, James 1:19 says, "Understand this, my dear brothers and sisters, you must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry." right?
Yeah.
Proverbs 15:1 says, a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. So, Bible teaches about that. Again, Matthew 5:9 says, God blesses those who work for peace, or peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Colossians 3:13 says, make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. I think I was referring to that when we were talking earlier. Proverbs 19 verses 11 says, sensible people control their temper. They earn respect by overlooking wrongs. So, see, no one is perfect, including us, and conflicts can happen. But the question is, are we going to resolve those conflicts? And how are we going to manage it? So resolution is one thing. Managing conflicts is also an important topic. What we have done in this episode is just bringing this awareness that this is inevitable in many cases. As long as you are alive, and there is always this opportunity of somebody misunderstanding you. And some people may ignore it. Some people may stretch it further. Some people may spread the bad or wrong information. Some people may take advantage of few things too. So this is all possible, right? But as we follow Christ and as we follow God, we have to be very careful. And sometimes it's out of your control, so we may just have to let it go. But if the parties are involved to talk, we should always talk and resolve it. And so, those are my final thoughts for this episode.
So, thank you for sharing, and to all our listeners. My dad talked about this whole topic. It's a huge topic, but we just covered the quick main basics about conflict resolution and how my dad told how to navigate it, and sometimes we have to look at our own faults without just judging everyone, and we should have the mind of forgiving, and we should be open to talking to the person if we have a conflict, and we shouldn't spread the problem and make more problems everywhere. So I hope this helps all the listeners to understand that we shouldn't make problems. So to all our listeners, thank you for listening. In the coming weeks, we will be coming back with more editions of Thriving Talk, and I'll be asking more questions. As we said in the beginning, this episode is available on many major platforms. Do not forget to follow or subscribe to the Thriving Talk podcast on your favorite platform to receive new episodes when they get released. Also remember that my dad has a newsletter that goes out every other week, and in that he shares a lot of good information. The link to the newsletter will be in the show notes. Go check out the newsletter and you can subscribe to the newsletter.
This week, I'm having an edition coming this Thursday. I've changed the day from Wednesday to Thursday now. Good. So it will be coming day after tomorrow, tomorrow. Tomorrow. And then after that, this podcast goes out. Yep.
Yes. So you can check that out. And my dad tells some you say stories from your trip and stuff.
Yeah, I think I'm done with that, but I have some interesting stories to share.
Yeah, so it will be interesting to go check that out. So we'll be back, but until then, we shouldn't make problems, and if we have a problem, we should try to resolve it.
Yes, conflict resolution. Thank you. God bless you all.